Alright everyone, this is Stammering and welcome back to the channel that's all about stammering, stuttering and everything in between. And happy International Day of People with Disabilities. On this auspicious day, I thought I would cover a topic which is a big source of discussion and debate within this stammering community. And this is stammering a disability? And should we call ourselves disabled? And this is a huge topic, off the top of my head, massive topic, and I'm not going to cover everything in this one video. However, I wanted to touch on the basics of it, especially since the theme of International Day of People with Disabilities this year is that not all disabilities are visible. And this is exactly what stammering, if we do consider a disability, stammering comes under this heading. Because it's not always visible and it can go under the radar very, very easily. However, that doesn't mean that it's not having an impact. So I wanted to cover this from a few different points. Firstly, I wanted to go into the law around stammering and whether stammering is legally considered a disability. Obviously, I'm based in the UK, so I'm going to be dealing mostly with UK laws. However, a lot of other countries have a similar philosophy to the UK. And I'd also like to go into some of the different models of disability, and how they affect stammering in different ways. And then finally look into why people are reluctant to label themselves as disabled and what this ultimately means. First of all, law. In terms of the law, is stammering considered to be a disability? Well, in the UK, according to the Equality Act 2010, a person has a disability if A, they have a physical or mental impairment, and B, that impairment has a substantial and long-term adverse effect on the person's ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. So in terms of stammering, this absolutely fits. This absolutely fits that definition. We do have an impairment which could both be considered physical and mental, because it has a physical effect which you can see, and it is a neurological condition. And also it does have substantial and long-term effects on our ability to carry out certain activities. This doesn't mean that it affects us all the time. This does not mean that it's exactly the same from day to day, but it fits these qualifications. So within the UK, in terms of the legal side of it, a stammer absolutely counts as a disability. And what this means is we have that element of protection. If we feel we are being discriminated against because of our stutters, then we have a grounds to fight back against it and to stand up for ourselves. And we have that legal protection. Stammering is something which people are still not fully seeing as a disability. So sometimes we need to be the ones to stand up and be no, this absolutely qualifies, and it does. If you're in the UK, I'm going to link a website below which is called stammeringlaw.org.uk, and it is a phenomenal website which just takes you through all of the law around the Equality Act and other laws as well, and links it into stammering, and just helps you to see what your rights are in terms of law. So this is what the law is in the UK, but what does it actually mean to be disabled? And what are the different models which can be applied to disability? And the two main models which come up in regards to stuttering are the medical model and the social model. And I'm just going to talk you through what both of these are, just to give you a bit more of an idea of them. Firstly, the medical model of disability believes that a person is disabled because there is something wrong with them which needs to be fixed. Like, so like, for example, like if somebody like is in a wheelchair like, and can't get into a building, like it's because of their wheelchair like that they can't get into the building. And similarly, like, if I were to call up like a doctor's office, like kind of meet like a voice recognition system, like which timed out before I had time to say what I was going to say, and then according to the medical model, I would be disabled like because I cannot speak fast enough. So the medical model very much like kind of puts the responsibility and the onus onto the individual as like you're disabled because there is something wrong with you. However, like what we're seeing like in a lot of disability circles now, like is that's not good enough. And what we're moving more towards like is the social model. And the social model believes that kind of that like we're disabled like kind of not because we cannot do something, but like because like there aren't the reasonable adjustments in society to help us to do that thing. So like according to the social model, if somebody like in a wheelchair isn't able to get into the building, like it is because like a ramp has not been provided, like and like those means for them to get into those buildings haven't been provided. It's not that person's fault, it's a fact that like what they need is not there. And similarly with my voice recognition example as well, in that situation, according to the social model, like it is not my speech which is disabling me. Like, the very act of speaking with a stutter like, is not disabling like, in and of itself. It becomes disabling due to attitudes of people thinking that I should be speaking faster, that I should be speaking more clearly, that I should speak in this specific way. Okay, that is what is disabling me. And not my disfluent speech. And I often say that in terms of my stammer, if people were just more willing to wait and more willing to listen to me and just view my stammer in the same way like in which they view my accent. I live like in London, but like I'm Scottish. And like so like the way I speak is already different. However, like my stammer is just another part of how my speech is different. And if people were to recognise that, I would have far fewer issues. And that's kind of where the social model is coming from, and that's where we're moving towards like, as a society, which is where people like who have differences like shouldn't have to force themselves into this box like, and pretend to be something they're not, just to fit with a society that's not willing to accept them. And instead, like society, like it should be willing to make those adjustments and to make that person feel welcome and feel accepted and feel seen. And that is like what we're now moving towards, which is great. However, we still have quite a way to go with it. Okay, like so, like surely, like based on what I've said so far, like if stuttering is a disability, like and if it fits with the models of disability, then surely somebody like, who stutters is disabled, and is happy to say that they're disabled. Not always. There's still a lot of like reluctance like, within the stammering community like for people to say that they're disabled, and there's a few reasons for this. One of them is that there's still a lot of stigma and a lot of shame related to kind of saying you're disabled, because even with the strides we've made towards equality, people are reluctant to say they're disabled like, because it's perceived as weakness, as a flaw, as a defect like within society. And so like people are reluctant to label themselves that, because then other people may have these negative connotations about them. And I think that's a real shame, like because in the same way like, that you can't pick your race, you can't pick your sexuality, you can't pick your gender, you also can't pick whether or not you have a disability. It's not a choice. It's not something you've sat up one day like and gone, I think I want to be disabled now. And like, in the same way, like you shouldn't feel shame for it. You shouldn't feel like that you failed in any way, because this is not something that you have chosen. And while there are a lot of people who like now are like, accepting of their disability as part of them, like an embrace it, like nobody has sat up and chosen to be disabled, and therefore like, it shouldn't be something which we're ashamed of. Like, and it shouldn't be something okay, which we don't want to say we are, like for fear of being discriminated against. I would love to see like a move towards people like saying, yes, I have a disability, and that's okay. And like another reason why people are reluctant like to like kind of say like, that they have a disability like is because they don't believe that they are disabled enough. And what I mean by this like is a lot of people are reluctant to say they're disabled like if they don't perceive themselves to have a bad enough disability to qualify for that. And and this ties into a few issues, because firstly, disability is not a competition, and we should not be competing as to who's the most disabled. Everyone has their own issues, everyone has their own journey. Let's not get into, because like we can't compare our experiences like to someone else's, and like even like within the stammering community, different people have different degrees like, of the severity of their stammer. And that does not mean that somebody with a mild stammer cannot consider themselves disabled. Again, it's not a competition. Like we shouldn't be like, oh, like, well, I can pass as fluent some days, so therefore I'm not disabled. And I think it just ties into like an overwhelming mindset of ableism, in that like we need to be like disabled enough, and we don't. And something I say that a lot of the time, as somebody like who can go through days and have no issues with my stutter, I have a disability. Like, however, that does not mean like that I'm always disabled by it. As I say, I can go through days where I have no issues with my speech, and then I have to pick up the phone and call somebody and give specific information, and I block, and I feel a bit disabled sometimes. And that's also fine. I'm allowed to feel that way, and I'm allowed to identify that way. And I think it's absolutely fine if somebody chooses not to identify as disabled. However, I think we do need to hang on to the idea that stuttering is a disability. And this is for like the simple reason of it's a lot easier to get help and to get support and to get funding like if we have that official label and people take us seriously. Because like speaking as someone who is involved with multiple kind of stammering charities, and like as like a matter of fact as it sounds, having that official labeling is so useful for us, and it is a lot harder like to get people to take like kind of stammering seriously like, as a disability when you have so many people within the community being like, oh well, it's not a disability. And that's why I think it is important like for people to like kind of say that stammering is a disability, even if you are not always disabled. Yeah, and also, as I said before, it's not a competition. Like disability is not a competition. Hardship is not a competition, and like, equality is not a competition. And we all need to work together and to stand up and to talk about this because it's a really important topic. I'm gonna leave that ramble there for now. I've probably missed 1,000 things, and I'll probably come back to this topic again in the future, because as I say, it's a big debate within the stammering community. And within this as well, I just want to say, I'm not disparaging anybody who doesn't want to identify as disabled. That is fine. That is fine. You are allowed to kind of choose not to identify like as disabled for yourself. However, like, if somebody does choose to identify as disabled, that is also completely fine. And please don't like kind of play down like their experience. Everybody's experience is valid. Like everybody has a right to kind of view like themselves however they would like. However, like kind of stuttering and stammering like, as a whole, I believe like it should always be considered like a disability. And that's where I'm going to leave it for today. So please sound off in the comments, like if you'd like to share your experiences, like of how you feel about it, then please do. I welcome any respectful debate. If you liked it, then please leave me a like, and please hit hit subscribe button if you haven't already and you'd like to see more from me in the future. All of my social medias are down in the description as well, so please give me a follow on those. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!